Healthy relationships are fundamentally rooted in safety and trust, and understanding this from both a psychological and biological perspective can transform the way you connect with others. Safety in a relationship is not just about feeling comfortable, it is deeply linked to how the nervous system perceives threat and reward. When someone feels emotionally or physically unsafe, the brain's threat detection systems activate, releasing stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. This state triggers fight, flight, or freeze responses, which can make even small disagreements feel overwhelming or personal. In contrast, when a person feels safe, the brain downregulates these stress systems, allowing the prefrontal cortex, the rational decision-making part of the brain, to function optimally. This facilitates open communication, empathy, and problem-solving. Trust and safety are therefore interdependent. Consistently demonstrating reliability, honesty, and emotional availability strengthens the neural circuits associated with social bonding, reinforcing a sense of security in the relationship. One practical way to foster safety is through predictable behavior. Small, consistent actions such as keeping promises, showing up when expected, and following through on commitments signal to the brain that the environment is stable. This reliability creates a low-stress context where both individuals can engage without fear of unpredictable emotional consequences. Another critical element is emotional attunement, actively noticing, validating, and responding to the other person's emotional state. This does not mean always agreeing or fixing problems, but acknowledging feelings in a way that signals understanding and acceptance. Such attunement stimulates the release of oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone, which further promotes trust and reduces stress. Physical cues also play a significant role. Body language, eye contact, and tone of voice can all communicate safety or threat before words are processed consciously. For example, a calm, steady tone and open posture can signal receptivity, whereas tense muscles or abrupt gestures may unconsciously trigger defensive responses. Safety is further reinforced through conflict management. When disagreements arise, maintaining a composed and non-threatening approach helps prevent escalation. Techniques such as pausing before responding, using neutral language, and explicitly expressing the desire to understand rather than attack help keep the nervous system regulated for both parties. Over time, these repeated experiences of feeling understood, respected, and secure create strong relational resilience. The absence of such safety can lead to chronic stress, avoidance, or patterns of miscommunication, whereas consistent, intentional cultivation of safety fosters deeper connection, mutual respect, and emotional intimacy. In essence, prioritizing safety and trust in relationships is not a passive state, but an active, ongoing process that relies on awareness, consistency, and biological attunement to the other person's needs. Understanding attachment patterns is crucial for building and maintaining healthy relationships because these patterns shape how individuals perceive connection, respond to stress, and interpret the behavior of others. Attachment theory, originally developed by John Bowlby, explains that early interactions with caregivers form neural templates for how people relate to others throughout life. These templates influence whether a person develops a secure, anxious, or avoidant attachment style, each of which has distinct behavioral and emotional tendencies. Securely attached individuals tend to feel comfortable with intimacy, can communicate their needs effectively, and are generally resilient under relational stress. Anxious individuals often seek excessive reassurance and may interpret minor cues as signs of rejection, leading to heightened emotional responses. Avoidant individuals, in contrast, may struggle with closeness, often withdrawing or suppressing emotions when faced with conflict or intimacy. Awareness of one's attachment style allows for greater self-understanding and reduces automatic, reactive behaviors that can undermine relationships. It also provides insight into the dynamics of interpersonal interactions. For instance, if someone notices a partner withdrawing, understanding that this may stem from an avoidant attachment style rather than a lack of care can prevent unnecessary conflict or misinterpretation. Neural mechanisms play a critical role in attachment behaviors. The amygdala, responsible for threat detection, can become hyperactive in anxious individuals, triggering emotional reactivity, while avoidant individuals may engage higher prefrontal inhibition to suppress emotional responses. Recognizing these patterns allows for conscious regulation of one's nervous system, preventing escalation during disagreements or emotionally charged situations. Attachment awareness also guides effective communication strategies. Anxiously attached individuals benefit from clear reassurance and consistent feedback, which helps regulate their nervous system, while avoidant individuals may need space and gentle encouragement to express vulnerability without feeling overwhelmed. Secure attachment provides a template for adaptive responses, but even those with anxious or avoidant tendencies can develop healthier patterns through intentional effort, reflection, and consistent practice of emotional regulation. Behavioral interventions such as active listening, mirroring emotions, and providing non-judgmental support reinforce neural pathways associated with secure attachment, strengthening relational bonds over time. Understanding attachment is equally important for managing conflict. When both individuals recognize their patterns, they can anticipate triggers, avoid maladaptive cycles, and approach disagreements with curiosity rather than defensiveness. For example, recognizing that a partner's withdrawal may be an avoidant response rather than rejection allows for a calm, empathetic approach that reduces tension. This awareness also supports empathy and compassion, enabling partners to respond in ways that promote connection rather than amplify anxiety or withdrawal. Over time, deliberate attention to attachment dynamics enhances emotional intimacy, reduces misunderstandings, and fosters long-term relational stability. Healthy relationships rely on this understanding because it creates a foundation for secure connection, mutual respect, and adaptive communication, ultimately allowing both individuals to thrive emotionally and relationally. Mindful communication is a cornerstone of healthy relationships, and its effectiveness goes far beyond the words spoken. At the neural level, communication is deeply influenced by the state of the nervous system. When either person is stressed, anxious, or emotionally flooded, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for rational thought, empathy, and perspective-taking, becomes less active, while the amygdala, which detects threats, becomes hyperactive. This imbalance can make even minor disagreements escalate quickly because the brain interprets perceived slights as dangers. Practicing mindful communication means first recognizing and regulating your own nervous system before engaging in a conversation, particularly around conflict or emotionally charged topics. Simple techniques like deep, slow breathing, grounding exercises, or briefly stepping away allow the brain to shift from a reactive state to a more reflective one, enabling thoughtful responses rather than impulsive reactions. Another key component is active listening, which involves fully attending to the other person without immediately preparing a response or judgment. This requires maintaining eye contact, open body language, and verbal or nonverbal signals that indicate understanding, such as nodding or repeating back the essence of what the other person said. Active listening reduces the likelihood of misinterpretation and signals to the brain that the environment is safe for vulnerability, which promotes oxytocin release and strengthens social bonding. Clarity and expression is equally important. Clearly articulating thoughts, needs, and feelings without blaming or criticizing prevents defensive reactions. Using I statements rather than you statements shifts the focus from judgment to personal experience, which helps maintain an atmosphere of psychological safety. Timing also plays a critical role in mindful communication. Attempting to resolve conflicts when either person is highly activated neurologically can backfire because the capacity for reasoned dialogue is compromised. Recognizing when to pause, return to the conversation later, or set a mutually agreed upon time to discuss important issues ensures that both individuals are more receptive and capable of understanding each other. Emotional validation is another essential aspect, where acknowledging and reflecting the other person's feelings without necessarily agreeing reduces defensive responses and reinforces connection. This practice signals that emotions are recognized and accepted, which downregulates stress responses and facilitates cooperative problem solving. Mindful communication also involves curiosity and empathy, striving to understand the underlying motivations and needs behind a partner's words rather than making assumptions. This approach strengthens relational resilience and allows for constructive negotiation of differences. Over time, consistent application of mindful communication techniques not only improves conflict resolution, but also deepens intimacy, fosters mutual respect, and creates a feedback loop of trust and safety. The brain literally learns to associate dialogue with connection rather than threat, reinforcing neural pathways that support long-term relationship health. By integrating nervous system awareness, active listening, clarity, timing, and validation, mindful communication transforms interactions from potential points of friction into opportunities for growth, understanding, and sustained connection. Consistency and predictability are fundamental pillars of healthy relationships, and their impact extends deeply into both psychological and neurobiological processes. Human brains are wired to detect patterns, and consistent behavior signals safety, while inconsistency triggers uncertainty and stress. When someone behaves reliably, the brain interprets this as a predictable and stable environment, which reduces activation of threat response circuits in the amygdala and allows higher-order reasoning and empathy to flourish. This creates a foundation where emotional intimacy and trust can grow naturally. In contrast, inconsistency, such as broken promises, unpredictable moods, or unreliable follow-through, activates uncertainty, which the brain often interprets as a potential threat. This triggers stress hormones like cortisol and can lead to hypervigilance, anxiety, and even withdrawal from the relationship over time. Small, repeated actions are often more impactful than occasional grand gestures because the brain responds more strongly to predictable patterns than to one-time displays of affection. For example, consistently checking in, listening actively, or following through on commitments reinforces neural circuits associated with safety and social bonding. Reliability in communication is equally important. Responding in a timely manner, honoring agreed-upon plans, and being transparent about intentions signal that the relationship is a stable, trustworthy space. Even subtle cues, such as maintaining eye contact, a calm tone, or a steady presence during challenging moments, contribute to the perception of predictability. Physical routines and shared rituals also enhance consistency. Simple practices like regular date nights, shared meals, or daily check-ins provide the brain with predictable markers of connection and reinforce emotional security. Over time, these repeated experiences strengthen oxytocin release and support long-term attachment, making both individuals feel more valued and understood. Boundaries play a complementary role in reinforcing predictability. Clearly communicated and respected boundaries allow both partners to anticipate each other's needs, preferences, and limits, reducing misunderstandings and unintentional conflict. Predictability is not rigidity. It is a flexible structure that supports reliability while allowing for growth and change. Conflict resolution benefits from consistent approaches as well. Partners who adopt predictable, constructive strategies for managing disagreements, such as pausing to regulate emotions, using calm language, and addressing issues promptly, create a stable framework that reduces relational stress. Emotional attunement is strengthened when consistency is present because the brain learns to trust that expressions of vulnerability will be met with predictable support rather than unpredictability. In professional and personal contexts alike, people are drawn to those who are reliable because predictability fosters trust, reduces cognitive load, and signals safety. Over time, this consistency reinforces relational resilience, making relationships more durable and adaptive to life's inevitable challenges. In essence, the regularity of actions, words, and emotional responses lays the groundwork for trust, security, and deep connection. Relationships flourish when both individuals can rely on each other not only in major life events, but in the subtle, everyday moments where predictability communicates care, stability, and mutual respect. Respecting boundaries and autonomy is a central component of healthy relationships, and it operates on both psychological and neurobiological levels. Boundaries are essentially the limits we establish to protect our emotional, physical, and mental well-being. Autonomy, on the other hand, is the capacity to maintain a sense of self and personal agency within a relationship. When boundaries and autonomy are respected, the brain interprets the relational environment as safe, predictable, and non-threatening, which reduces stress responses and fosters openness and trust. Lack of respect for boundaries can activate threat detection circuits in the amygdala, triggering defensiveness, withdrawal, or conflict. A healthy relationship balances closeness with independence, recognizing that intimacy does not require merging identities or sacrificing personal needs. Individuals who feel they can maintain autonomy while being emotionally connected experience less relational anxiety and higher overall satisfaction. Establishing boundaries begins with self-awareness. Understanding personal limits, preferences, and triggers allows individuals to communicate clearly what is acceptable and what is not. This clarity reduces ambiguity, which the brain perceives as potential risk, and provides a framework for consistent and predictable interactions. Communicating boundaries effectively requires calm, direct, and non-judgmental language. Using I statements rather than accusatory you statements helps convey needs without triggering defensiveness in the partner. For example, expressing, "I need some quiet time after work to recharge," is more effective than saying, "You're always overwhelming me." Respecting boundaries is reciprocal. When one person's limits are acknowledged and honored, it reinforces a sense of safety and mutual respect, strengthening the relational bond. Autonomy is reinforced not only through respecting physical and emotional space, but also by supporting individual growth, interests, and decision-making. Partners who encourage each other's personal goals and hobbies help maintain a sense of identity, which paradoxically deepens intimacy because both individuals feel fully seen and valued. Nervous system regulation plays a role here. When boundaries are violated, stress responses can increase, making communication less effective and escalating conflict. Maintaining autonomy within connection allows the prefrontal cortex to remain engaged, supporting rational dialogue and emotional attunement. Conflict management benefits from respecting boundaries, as it prevents escalation by allowing each person space to process emotions before responding. Checking in regularly about comfort levels and needs also fosters ongoing alignment and prevents resentment from accumulating. Physical and emotional boundaries can take many forms, including personal space, time alone, limits on topics of discussion, and boundaries around digital communication. Recognizing that each individual has unique preferences and comfort levels is key to maintaining mutual respect. When both autonomy and boundaries are integrated into the relational dynamic, trust, safety, and emotional intimacy are reinforced, creating a resilient foundation that can adapt to change and challenges without compromising individual well-being. Over time, honoring these principles cultivates a relationship where both partners feel empowered, valued, and connected in a way that promotes long-term health and satisfaction. Reinforcing positivity and fostering growth are essential elements in maintaining healthy relationships, and they operate through both psychological mechanisms and neural processes. Human brains are naturally wired to focus on threats and negative experiences because this bias historically increased survival. As a result, without conscious effort, partners can easily focus on conflicts, mistakes, or shortcomings, which can erode trust and emotional connection over time. Actively reinforcing positive behaviors and expressing gratitude counteracts this negativity bias, promoting stronger neural pathways associated with reward, safety, and social bonding. Positive reinforcement in relationships involves recognizing and acknowledging actions, words, or behaviors that contribute to mutual well-being. This does not require grand gestures. Small, consistent acknowledgments, like thanking a partner for their support, noticing their efforts, or expressing appreciation for shared experiences, have a disproportionately large impact on relationship satisfaction. These expressions trigger oxytocin release, which reduces stress, enhances trust, and increases emotional closeness. Growth in relationships also requires framing challenges and conflicts as opportunities rather than threats. Healthy couples use disagreements as a way to understand each other more deeply, negotiate differences, and learn about themselves. Approaching conflict with curiosity and problem-solving rather than blame strengthens resilience and prevents patterns of defensiveness or withdrawal. Encouraging each other's personal development, hobbies, and goals fosters a sense of individual fulfillment that complements relational satisfaction. When both partners feel supported in growth, the relationship becomes a safe environment for experimentation, vulnerability, and change. Mindful attention to positive interactions also shapes long-term patterns. Celebrating successes, expressing affection, and regularly verbalizing appreciation create a feedback loop where the brain associates the relationship with reward rather than threat. This strengthens secure attachment and reduces the likelihood of chronic stress responses during disagreements or uncertainty. Emotional attunement and active engagement during these positive interactions amplify their effects. Simple practices such as maintaining eye contact, reflecting back emotions, or engaging in shared activities reinforce connection and communicate value without requiring verbal affirmation. Moreover, intentional reinforcement of positivity sets the tone for conflict resolution. When partners feel recognized and valued, they are more likely to approach disagreements collaboratively rather than defensively. This approach also cultivates empathy, patience, and perspective-taking, which are critical for long-term relational health. Fostering growth requires consistent effort and adaptability. People evolve over time, and relationships must adjust to new circumstances, interests, and challenges. Supporting each other's growth while maintaining mutual respect and emotional presence ensures that both individuals thrive individually and collectively. Over time, integrating positivity and growth into daily interactions builds a resilient relational foundation where trust, intimacy, and satisfaction are continuously reinforced. Relationships characterized by these practices are more likely to withstand stress, adapt to change, and sustain deep, fulfilling emotional bonds, creating a dynamic and nurturing environment for both partners. When positivity and growth are intentionally reinforced, they transform a relationship from a mere partnership into a dynamic, supportive ecosystem. Over time, both individuals feel valued, seen, and motivated to contribute their best selves, which deepens emotional intimacy and trust. This continual cycle of appreciation, encouragement, and personal development creates a resilient foundation that can withstand challenges, adapt to life's changes, and sustain long-term fulfillment. By prioritizing positivity and growth, relationships evolve into thriving connections where both partners experience mutual respect, joy, and lasting emotional security.